Hi, welcome. When you're seeing this video, it's my birthday. I'm turning 40. Got a lot of feelings about it, but I thought this would be the perfect time to kind of sit down and look at my sweaty glasses. Okay, these are coming off. It's a little warm. Perfect time to sit down and figure out what my all-time favorite books are. I know when someone asks what my favorite books are, I have like 3 or 4 answers off the top of my head, no question. But there are also others kind of like in a nebulous area that I don't always remember to mention that are my favorite books, but they are. So I have a mixture of comics, manga, series, and books, standalone books. And what I'm going to do is essentially, these are 20 items that I'm going to talk about, going from pretty much kind of in order. I'm going to start with all the comics and manga. That's going to be like the first 5 I talk about. And then from there, a countdown to my all-time favorite book. That was a little easier to do. Comics and manga is a little more nebulous because different ones do different things for me. I'm going to start with a group of comics and manga, then count down my top 15 favorite books and series of all time. And it was fun coming up with this list. Brought up a lot of memories with a lot of these books, reminders that I want to reread some of these books, so that might be happening soon. And I just kind of hope that you get kind of a feel for what my overall reading is. Like, if you've been here for a while, I know you kind of get an idea that I love a lot of sci-fi, fantasy, comics, graphic novels, manga. But there are like steadfast, my favorite books that I love. And as I can see from this shelf here, this shelf, oh my god, I have no sense of rhythm in the camera. Okay, this shelf here, this is usually where all my favorite books live. You can kind of tell what are going to be my favorites. I had to take the shelf apart to pull them so I could hold them up. Let's get started. I am so excited to talk about all my favorite things. The first comic that we're going to talk about is a Marvel comic, and this is Ruunaways, originated by Brian K. Vaughan. This is a teen comic, essentially a bunch of teen kids whose parents get together on a regular basis. They're not really friends. Their parents are kind of like know each other and are friends, and they kind of know each other having grown up, with these gatherings. And essentially they find out that the reason for these gatherings are that their parents are actually kind of evil. They're supervillains. And when they find out what their parents are doing, they run away, thus Runaways. So it's a group of different cast of characters, and we just kind of fall in love with all of them. I just have a very deep place in my heart for all of them. I think after volume 3, it just kind of like waned for me, but the first 2 volumes is still pure, just great comics. And if you recognize Brian K. Vaughan, that is the Brian K. Vaughan who writes Saga, so it's good stuff. All right, next is Captain America Winter Soldier by Ed Brubaker. I think, in my heart of hearts, the Captain America Winter Soldier is the best Marvel movie, and is absolutely one of my absolute favorite movies. I have watched this movie, and I'm not joking you, probably about 50 to 100 times, start to finish, because I tend to put it on as just when I can't decide what I want to watch, we're watching Winter Soldier. And I tend to watch it the whole way through. Even though I'll get a little distracted, look at my phone and stuff, I'm still watching the whole movie. And I think the movie is so good because it has a great story basis in the original Winter Soldier comic. This was a big deal. It is a big deal emotionally, plot-wise, like it's Bucky coming back, as the Winter Soldier. And it's just such a good series. If you've never read the comic series and you like the Winter Soldier, you like Bucky and Steve and their dynamic, absolutely give the comics a try. They're just like perfection, like really great, contained, great plot, great story, lots of great emotional beats, and it really brought Bucky back into the Marvel Universe, reintroduced him in the Marvel Universe, where before he had really been known as Cap's sidekick in the past. And now he's Bucky, and everybody loves Bucky. Like, he's one of the most beloved Marvel characters of all time, at least in the movies. Okay, next. These top 3 were hard to decide, but I think a little more of a recency bias is the reason why I have put this at 3 instead of 2. Number 3 is Young Avengers, created by Allan Heinberg. These are the teen group of my heart. I love the Young Avengers. I love Billy Kaplan. He's one of my favorite characters of all time. I love Billy and Teddy. I remember I was there when Young Avengers was first coming out, and before it was revealed that Billy and Teddy were gay and in a romance, the fandom had already picked up on it. So it was just such a big deal to have gay and openly gay characters in the comics like this, because they were so few and far between, and to have teenagers where teens could see themselves in these characters. It was great. I love the Young Avengers. Great stories. There have been ups and downs in the storylines and stuff, but they have always had a great through line of who the characters are, who they are to each other. And I love them. I love them so much, and I am so behind on the current Marvel phase, mostly because when I came back to reading, I all of my TV time just shifted into reading time. But I know that they are building up something of the Young Avengers in the current Marvel phase. And yes, I did watch Vision and Scarlet Witch, and I know I got my Billy and my Tommy in that TV show, and that thrilled me so much. The Halloween episode where they had their costumes, I loved it. I know there's more. I do need to watch Agatha All Along, but I love my Billy. Like, he is precious to me. Just to show off, here is one of my prized comics. This is a director's cut of Young Avengers #1, signed by Jim Chung, who was the original artist who helped create these characters. So you can kind of see that director's cut. So there's Teddy. Here's Billy. Here's Billy. And because it was issue 1, they didn't have the girls yet, so no Cassie or Kate on this cover, but yes, this is one of my prized possessions. Love it. I think I got it signed at a Comic-Con sometime, so there it is. There's my babies. Moving on to the next one, Yona of the Dawn. This manga series took me by surprise when I first started it. I heard great things about it, but part of me was like, oh, it's like one of those, like, you know, young girl fantasy kind of world. I wasn't sure if it was to my taste, but the more I read, the more I loved Yona, the more I enjoyed where the plot was going. And it is in volume 43 now, I think. I haven't read 43 yet, but it is in volume 43 now, and it's gotten to the point where it is such a great, like, political fantasy like series. It does have the magic. It does have Yona and her beloved, like, found family. It does have Yona and the slow burn romance of her and Hawk. But it's just all of those elements come together, and the art is so good. I love all the characters. I love all the side characters that we revisit every now and then. It's so good, and I cannot recommend this enough. And the reason that it's, you know, at #2 over Young Avengers is recency bias. Like, literally volume 43 came out this year, and I have to read it. I've been reading it for the last year or two, and I love it. As you can see back here behind me, I'm collecting it slowly. But it's very much a commitment to collect this entire, like I said, 43 volumes, and each volume is $10 to $12. So I try to find it on sale when I can on Pango and stuff like that, but it's still a commitment. But Yona of the Dawn, just, even if the first 2 or 3 volumes kind of seems like it's one thing, I think really just give it a chance, get, you know, a couple volumes in, really see where it's going, and I love it so much. It's so good. I cannot recommend this enough. Okay, now for what is essentially my favorite comics of all time. My favorite character in comics. Marvel comics. These are Marvel comics. I'm a Marvel girl. Favorite Marvel comics of all time. Favorite Marvel character of all time. And that is X Factor by Peter David. And my favorite character, Siren, aka Teresa Cassidy, aka she is now known as Banshee. I started reading these, and it was like, this run of X Factor by Peter David is a, I don't have the original #1. It is essentially started as a noir kind of a detective series where multiple man, Jamie Madrox, starts X Factor investigations, and they investigate stuff for the mutants. Jamie and Teresa have a storied past history, all the characters, everything going on, the detective work, and I just fell so hard for Teresa to the point where, I kid you not, I have read every single appearance she has ever been in across all of Marvel Comics. And not just that, but like I own, okay, first, okay. So I pulled out these two X Factors because this is signed. Actually, no, this is not signed, but this represents a shift in her character, a really big shift in her character. So I wanted this one. Where's the one with Monet? Where did I put that? Okay, I gotta find that. Okay, oh my god, I thought I had way more. Not so organized here. Okay, in order. This is issue 6. This is signed by Peter Calero, the artist for this issue. You can kind of see the drawing there. Met him at Comic-Con. Artist Alley at Comic-Con. Bought it and signed it. At the same Comic-Con, I got this signed by Peter David himself. I used to run a comic blog back in the day, a very long time ago, called Girls Read Comics Too. It seems kind of on the nose, but at the time that I started the blog, it was kind of the moment when women were really pushing through in the comics world, both as writers, as creators, as content creators, as readers, as fans. In fandom. So it was pretty successful for a while. We actually, at one Comic-Con one year, we did a little multiple man meetup with Peter David. I made a multiple man t-shirt and it was fantastic. So here is this issue. This is number 29, signed by Peter David. Here is issue number, 46. Amazing art. This is signed by, I'm gonna be so honest, I don't remember who it's signed by. It's either by Peter David or by the artist of this amazing cover. And it's beautiful. And I think when I got it signed by him, he showed me, so a lot of artists at Comic-Con will have like the big massive originals of their art, and he was like, hey, here it is. And I was like, oh, I don't have $2,000 to buy that, otherwise I would. But yeah, that's Teresa. That's my girl. Here is issue 200. They actually, I think, renumbered because there used to be an X Factor run back in the past that Peter David also did. So when combined that old run with the current run, when they hit this issue, they renumbered it to 200. Here's Teresa down at the bottom, signed by Peter David. And again, this one is not signed, but I wanted it because it represented such a huge shift in Teresa's character. Also, going back to how much of a fan of Teresa I am, I own the very first comic that she appeared in, and you can see here. She actually showed up as a brief villain in this Spider-Woman series. Teresa's history is that she's actually the daughter of Banshee, who was like second generation X-Men. Like after the original 5, Banshee came in. So Banshee, her dad has been an X-Men for so long, and he thought that she died as a baby when his wife, Teresa's mom, was caught in an explosion. But his brother, no, that's Nick Fury. His brother, Black Tom Cassidy, who works with Juggernaut, who's over here, actually found Teresa as a baby and raised her. And he's a villain, so she was kind of going in his steps. And Teresa thinks, in this issue, I think, she thinks she kills Spider-Woman by accident. And she feels so much remorse that she goes to the X-Men to like give herself up and ask them for help. So that is the first appearance of Teresa Cassidy that I own. Then also, just for fun, I own, there was a very long running series called X-Force, which is actually where Cable got, it was like a long running Cable series where he ran this group called X-Force, and Teresa was in it for hundreds of issues. Like I said, I've read all of them, but I have some of the more important issues. So here, like I said, this is Black Tom Cassidy. This is an important issue where she comes to terms with how he raised her, their toxic relationship, and her alcoholism. So she is an alcoholic, and she comes to terms with it, and she ends up quitting alcohol, starting AA. Here is an issue where a character that she's very close to, one of her best friends and maybe romantic interest, dies. Comes back later because it's comics. And here is also an issue where, so her father and Teresa, they both have vocal powers. They both scream, and their sonic scream allows them to fly, allows them to do a lot of stuff. There's a fight, and a wolfsbane rips Teresa's throat so much that her vocal cords are severed and she can't talk, can't use her voice. She goes into a deep depression, and this issue is all about her dealing with that, going through that depression, and eventually coming through out on the other side. So these are 3 very important character issues for her that I wanted to own, and I do. All that is to say, X Factor, my absolute favorite Marvel series. I'm going to do a reread soon because I'm in the mood for it. And Teresa Cassidy, aka Siren, aka Banshee, my favorite character of all time. Favorite comic series of all time, X Factor. Okay, we are on to my top 15 favorite books/series of all time. Number 15. This is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. This is one of those books where when I was like thinking of the list, this is like always in the back of my mind as a favorite. This book it's historical fiction about the last woman who was sentenced to death in Iceland for murdering a man. Essentially, it follows her right up to the moments of her death. It's cold, it's bittersweet, it's heart-wrenching, it's so good. The writing is lovely. I really need to reread this. I haven't reread it since I first read it. Every time I think about it, I just have this feeling, this memory of what it felt like to read this book, to be completely transported into the mind of this character. And like, that's what reading is for. That's what you want to get out of something that really touches you and you really connect with. Burial Rites. One of the rare, like, non-speculative books that I can consider one of my favorites. Next, and this is a very new entry, but when thinking about it, I had to say yes. It's the Mossa and Pleiti series by Malka Older. This first book is The Making of Known Successes. There is a second book out, The Imposition of Unnecessary Obstacles, and the third book, The Potency of Ungovernable Impulses. There we go. That one is coming out very soon this year. So I love this series. It is sapphic, sci-fi, mystery set in orbit around Jupiter, and it's just I love it. I love Mossa and Pleiti. I love their fumbling into a relationship and then slowly coming together and understanding how to be together, and the mysteries they solve along the way, and the setting, and Malka Older's writing, and it's just, I love it. I cannot speak its praises enough. And this is kind of, for me, the top tier of what I love about this sci-fi mystery subgenre. This comfortable, this is Holmes-esque, you know, kind of subgenre of sci-fi. I love it so much. I can't speak its praises enough. And yeah, I love it. I love it. Next, I don't have any physical books for this, but it's the Kate Daniels series by Ilona Andrews. This is top tier urban fantasy for me. I devoured this series. This is a series that made me fall in love with Ilona Andrews. Amazing character work. I loved the romance, and like they get together pretty early on in the series, and then you get to follow them. And there is a spin-off series. I've been waiting for a couple of books to come out so that I can kind of binge them a little bit, where it's a spin-off series with their kid. So I just love it. This is an amazing world, amazing characters, all of the side characters that, like, this world slowly grows. Kate slowly gains a whole bunch of characters who she loves, who she would give her life for, and vice versa. It's just so good. And Kate is so badass. I love her. Yeah, this is peak urban fantasy for me. Love Kate Daniels. Okay, next is actually a play. This is The History Boys by Allan Bennett. I watched the movie that came out very, very many years ago, and then I read the play, and I think I've read the play like 3 times. I've watched the movie about a dozen times. I love this story, and I think it might be a little, you know, uncomfortable now, but for the time it was set in, for the place it was set in, I think it's just such a good story. It's a little tragic, a little fantastic. It is about boys in school and their teacher and them going through life through a school year. I really like it. I don't know, I'm not really into plays like this. I'm not a big fan of reading plays like this, but this one has always just kind of spoken to me and just kind of held a place in my heart. So yeah, History Boys. shocker of everything on my list, I think. Next is the Hornblower series by C.S. Forrester. I love Hornblower, and the reason I love Hornblower is because I was watching the A&E series starring Ioan Gruffudd and Jamie Bamber and what's his name, Paul McCann, when it was coming out on A&E, when all the movies were coming out. I think I caught like one of the first movies of the first four. I bought the DVDs of the first four, and then I was locked in. Every time a movie came out, I had to watch it. I own all the movies on DVD, actually. Then, of course, I transitioned to reading the actual series that it's based on, and I loved Hornblower even more. I think I like the movies a little more for them expanding Archie and kind of expanding Hornblower as a person. He's a little too wooden and hard to get to love here, but I do love him here. It's essentially following Hornblower through his entire career from a midshipman to an admiral in Napoleon era. It's, if you love Age of Sail, obviously you know Hornblower, but you know, if you're interested in Age of Sail, this is a fantastic place to start. A lot of people say actually start with book 5 or 6, I think, whichever one, what number is Beat to Quarters. A lot of people say that because it's a classic. It's really fantastic, but I love the entire series. I love Hornblower. Yeah, I want to reread it, but like I said, I want to reread all of these, so. Hornblower. Next is another series I don't have physical copies for, but this is the Iron Druid series by Kevin Hearne. Now, this is also urban fantasy done right, and despite it having an ending book that made me so upset, I was angry for months. I still get angry thinking about how that book ended and how the series ended. Despite that, it is still one of my favorite series. When book 9 came out, I didn't read it for like 2 years because I wasn't ready for the series to end. Then when I was ready to finally read it, I did a whole reread of the series. I read books 1 through 3 came out in like a year. And then, so I read all of them, and then I was reading as they came out. This is the story of a druid named Atticus who has been alive for like thousands of years, and his survival and how he gets entangled with all kinds of deities and pantheons, and things kind of snowball to a big epic conclusion that in my mind wasn't so epic. But I know saying that a series ended horribly is not the best thing, but I still love everything about it. I love the components about it. I love Atticus. I love the side characters. I just love the series. And I think I've read the first 3 books like 3 or 4 times by the time like I finished the series. So it holds a very, very, very special place in my heart. I just love it. Like, I was still giving book 8 4 or 5 stars, and the book 9 happened. It got 1 star. I was so mad. My review on Goodreads is just rage. But it just makes me think of, like, especially the first 3 books so much more fondly. I really, really love this series. We're just gonna pretend the book 9 doesn't exist when I read in the future, but yeah, I love the series with all my heart. Next is a book I did reread recently. This is How You Lose a Time War by Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. I did kind of annotate and stuff on this reread. Not a lot, because I'm not an annotator or highlighter or note taker, because when I get to a book where I would want to do that, I'm just so into the book that I just want to read it. I don't want to pause to highlight, but I did highlight some of my favorite lines and stuff from here. This is a series of 2 time agents who are at war and they fall in love, and it's weird and it's a little confusing, but the way they fall in love and how hard they fall in love and everything that they go through, I love it. My reread cemented it as one of my favorite books of all time. And I just, if you haven't read it, give it a try. I know the way it's written, it's a little flowery, it's a little confusing, it's not for everyone, but I think if this is something that you think you would like, if you like this kind of sci-fi, this kind of flowery, interesting, confusing, but rewarding sci-fi, then absolutely give it a try. I love it. I love it so much. I love red. I love blue. I love how incredibly hard they fall for each other. Definitely up here, it may make it like, and this is a lot newer than the other stuff above this, so we'll see how it works, you know. But yeah, I love it. Next is an odd one, and I don't really have an explanation for why I latched onto this, but this is Black Hawk Down by Mark Bowden. This is a collection of articles he wrote for, I can't remember, actually it's been so long since I read this that I can't remember if he was actually embedded with them in Somalia or if he was just reporting on this and he did such a great job that he was able to report on it so intimately. But this is the story of Black Hawk Down, the movie. I watched the movie, got the book, loved the movie. This is a story of a short period of time, a short military action where a bunch of US soldiers got pinned down in Mogadishu in Somalia and how they fight their way out and how they survive and how some of them don't survive and what that all means. And this is an intense book. It's very detailed. It's kind of like a minute by minute, play by play of what happened in that short period of time. Like literally it's only like 24 to 48 hours, but it's just covers a huge scope and also very intimate scope. It's so good. It's great reporting. The movie was really good. And the movie, I don't know if you've ever watched Black Hawk Down, but if you watch that movie, you will be shocked at how many young actors are in that movie. I'm talking like Ewan McGregor, Hugh Dancy, Tom Hardy, Orlando Bloom, Josh Hartnett. Just so many people you'll be shocked to discover in this. Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, Jamie Lannister is in this movie. So it's so good. It still sits with me. I still think about it very fondly. I need to do a reread just to see still how I feel about it, but it's a fantastic piece of nonfiction and I highly recommend it. Next is the Expanse series. This is the 10th anniversary edition of Leviathan Wakes Book 1. Nice and hot pink. The Expanse is sci-fi epic series. It's had a TV show that had 6 seasons. I love it. I love the books. I love the TV show. If you want to read the books and you haven't yet, I highly recommend the audiobooks. Jefferson Mays is an amazing audio narrator. I love the characters. I love the found family of all the characters. I love how things start kind of small, but then the politics of everything going on just blossom and bloom. And by the time you get to book 9, it's just so massive in scope that it's hard to imagine, like, going back to book 1, thinking about where book 1 started. It's hard to like imagine where we end up in book 9 with all the characters, with the world, with everything going on. It's just so good. I love this series so much and I can't recommend it enough. Yeah, I love the series. The TV show is really good, thankfully. I love The Expanse. I love it so much. Okay, next, and if you've been following me for a while, you're gonna be shocked that this is this low. But like I said, these are my all-time favorites, and this is a very new favorite. The fact that it's this high is indicative of how much I love this book. The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. I read this last year. It absolutely invaded my every particle of my being. This is an amazing work of fantasy, an amazing work of storytelling, especially. Simon Jimenez plays with how to tell stories, how we tell stories, how we read stories, how we interact with stories, and weaves this beautiful, bloody, gory, tragic, wonderful tale in it. I talk about this all the time. I think about it all the time. I want to reread it all the time. And Simon Jimenez is a favorite of mine. Like, auto-buy. Everything I really like The Vanished Birds. I read that first. I gave it 5 stars. And then I read this and I was like, oh my God. Insta new favorite book, insta new favorite author, insta new favorite book of all time. Like, I don't know what else I can say. It's so good. I think anybody who loves fantasy, anybody who loves storytelling needs to give this a try. I know it can be a little tough to get into and maybe it might not quite work for everybody, but I think it's worth at least the attempt. It's just so good. It's so good. The only reason it's this low in my list is because I've had a lot more time with the others and you will see why, but I love this book so much. Read it. Please read it. Okay, we are in top 5 territory and book number 5 is a little surprising, but I just did a reread of this recently. So this is Mystic River by Dennis Lehane. I did a reread of this, and it was like my third read of the book, and it just cemented for me that this is one of my absolute all-time favorite books. This is a story of three men who, when they were boys, when they were playing, one of them got lured into a car and he was kidnapped, and then he freed himself and came back 3 days later, but he went through a lot. There's a lot of, I would say, very heavy trigger warnings for child SA. It's off page, but it is referenced, and you know that's what happened. And so it follows these boys in adulthood in the current day, where one of them, his daughter, is murdered, and that kicks off an investigation, and their lives crash and intersect and untangle and unravel, and it's just this freight train that they can't get off of, and you as a reader can't get off of, to a very big conclusion. And here's the thing, is that knowing how the book ends, it made a reread all that better, because I could see how Lehane really truly like works with the characters to ratchet up the tension in a way where I know what's coming. First time I read it, I didn't know what was coming. Still loved it. The second and third time I read it, I knew it was coming, and it made the tension so much worse and everything so much more tragic. This is a master class in character work as well. It's just so good. All three of these men, this book, like, I can't describe it. It's just, the character work is so phenomenal. And it's a very hard book to enjoy, because it is very tense. I think you would classify it maybe as a literary thriller, less on the thrills, and I think the thrills come more from like where the story is going. It's so good. It really stands out to me as just one of the best in character work, and I just really love it. All right, we continue to get into just absolutely love, no explanations. My heart's all in this territory. The Red Rising series, the first trilogy. No, I have not read anything after the third book, and that is on purpose. I don't want to read the upcoming books until they're all out and I see how everything goes. I've read the entire trilogy 2 or 3 times, and I think early last year I was like, oh, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna annotate Red Rising because I love it so much. You can see I started, right? Yeah, that's as far as I got. Page 5. Because I was reading it and I did the thing where I'm like, oh, I just want to keep reading and reading and reading, and it's such a compulsive read that I just fucking stopped annotating and I read the entire trilogy in like 4 days. I love it. I love it so much. I know people have issues with it. I know, especially this first book, people are like, oh, it's just Hunger Games in space, but I love the characters. I love the world. I love how things grow so grand in scope. The ending of book 2 still is incredible. When my husband read it on audio, he ended book 2 and he was so shell-shocked he didn't start book 3 for like a while, even though he was like ripping through the first 2 books. And it's just so good. This entire series is so fucking good. I love it. And if you haven't read Red Rising yet, give it a, like, what are you waiting for? If you like sci-fi and you haven't read Red Rising yet, what are you waiting for? Read it. I love it. And even if you don't quite fully love or vibe with Red Rising, I think at least give the second book, is it Golden Sun? Give Golden Sun a try, because the books kind of shift in their format. So Red Rising, this one is kind of like a murder school, essentially, is what's happening here. But we grow out of that and we grow more into political war kind of stuff going on. So it's just... I love it. I love Darrow. I love everyone around him. I love the Howlers. I love it. I love everything. And every time I read this series, I just blow through it like the first time I ever read it. It's just so good. I love it. Even though I know what happens, I still feel all the emotions the same way as I felt the very first time I read it. It's very hard for stuff to do that for me, but Red Rising does it. I just love this series. If you haven't read it, go read it. Just saying. Okay. My third favorite book/series of all time. This is a series where I am very aware that this is not great literature, but this is a series where I have such a deep emotional attachment to this series. I honestly don't remember why. I don't remember how I got attached to this series, but I do. This is the Immortal Beloved series by Kate Tiernan. This is so 2010s paranormal. I'm going to say it's like a tiny step above all the crap like Hush Hush and stuff like that. That was just copying Twilight. But it's still 2010s paranormal. I understand that it's probably not going to live up to a lot of expectations. I think this came out literally in 2010. But I love this book so much and I have such an emotional attachment to it that if you read it and you don't like it, please don't tell me. That is how deep my emotional attachment to this. I don't feel that way about a lot of books. I really don't. But this one, I just cannot hear it. I understand that people may not like it and it may not be to your taste, but I don't want to hear it. I just want to share my love for it because I love it so much. This is the story of Nastasia. She is an immortal. She's been alive for quite a while, a thousand something. I should know this, like 1,200 years, something like that. And when we start the book with her in modern day in 2010, she's reached a point where she realizes that she is so disconnected from her own humanity. She's scared of who she has become. She essentially goes to what is sort of like immortal rehab, where she tries to work with these other people to reconnect with herself and her humanity. And there she meets a bunch of other immortals who are also going through the same thing. They have reached rock bottom. And then like the teachers who are trying to help her get out of this. It's like, immortal therapy, kind of. And she's also learning a lot about her own magic and where it comes from. And then there's also the male romantic interest who she may or may not have a past with that she has to figure out. I love this book series. I love Nastasia. The last time I reread this, I read it literally in like 3 hours because I know this book back to front and I love it so much. So yeah, this is just pure emotional. I love this book. And it's not the best book. The other 2 books above this, I have the same feelings for. I won't get as rabid if you don't like them, but they are better books. But I love this book so much. I love Nastasia as a character so much, and that is why it is my 3rd favorite book of all time. Okay, number 2. This was a little hard, but this feels right. The Lord of the Rings. This is my copy of the 50th anniversary edition, 1 volume. My history with Lord of the Rings is from what I remember, and maybe, the way memory goes, I'm 40 now, and I'm talking about like 30 years ago and more. Your brain can rewrite your memories, but the attachment I have to this, what I remember is that my grandfather would actually read to me, and this is one of the books that he would read. And eventually I moved on to reading on my own. But since I was about 15-ish, I got my own copy of The Lord of the Rings. I actually used to have the amazing copy with Gandalf on the cover. And I have read it every single year, except for 1 or 2 years. I read it every single year, the entire trilogy every single year. I don't log it, I don't talk about it because it's just a thing I do. Around, November, December-ish, I just start reading. It just has such an emotional attachment for me. For me, I know some people just don't vibe with Lord of the Rings. They don't vibe with it as deeply as I do, but it is a classic of fantasy for a reason. It is like the granddaddy of fantasy for a reason. And I just have such an emotional attachment to this story, to these characters, to this writing. It's number 2. It has been one of my favorite books since I was young, for 25 years at this point. Shocker. A sci-fi and fantasy book lover who has Lord of the Rings as one of her top books of all time. Shock, but yes. Number 2. And my favorite book of all time, it's Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. The fact that my favorite book of all time is a very literary work of speculative fiction is hilarious to me because I don't tend to enjoy I guess, but if you look at this list, I have a lot of literary stuff on there. But anyways, Cloud Atlas, I read at a time in my life where I really needed it. And it impacted me and affected me in such a way where like I didn't realize it until I went to watch the movie in theaters and I was seeing these stories on screen and come to life. The movie is not great. It's a decent movie. It did a decent adaptation. But seeing some of the themes come to life, I nearly cried in the movie theater because I didn't realize just how much I had internalized a lot of the theming in this, and especially for me. And this is something that I have realized is so important to me as a person existing in this world. The one thing that will always get me like angry, will upset me, is when people don't have consideration for others. You exist in this world with other people. Your actions affect other people, whether you intend them to or not, whether you know them or not. Stuff like people who have come up on social media who like, you know, that I am the main character energy where they just have no consideration for people around them. That kind of stuff really upsets me. And one of the main themes of this, and the actual quote comes from the movie, I think, but the main theme of this is like, we're bound together throughout life. From womb to tomb, we're bound together. Let me find the actual quote. It's been on my Goodreads profile for many years. Our lives are not our own. We are bound to others, past and present, and by each crime and every kindness, we birth our future. That is essentially how I try to live my life. That is essentially how I see the world. And Cloud Atlas kind of just condensed that into a framework, a narrative framework, a thematic framework for me in a way where I could point at it and go like, yes, that is how I view the world. It's a great story on top of it. It's, you know, these the stories nested within each other. The movie was great. The best parts about the movie for me were the letters from Zadel Gelm. So in the movie, that is Ben Whishaw and James Darcy. I love this book. I reread it last year in a night. Again, I was going to annotate it and then just didn't bother, and I just read the whole thing. I know it doesn't work for everyone. I know, and I don't care that it doesn't work for everyone. It works for me. It means a lot to me. Like I said, it has condensed how I feel about the world, how I try to move through the world into something I can point at and be like, that is me. Cloud Atlas did that for me. So my favorite book of all time. And that is why it is above Immortal Beloved. That is why it is above even The Lord of the Rings. It is my favorite book of all time. I'm so glad that I got to talk about my favorite books and kind of reminisce as I was going through all of that, just remembering like when I first read them, how I felt about them, how I still feel about them. And of course, now I want to reread all of them. Please tell me, what have you read out of all of these? Do you feel the same way about many of these? I'm sure Lord of the Rings is going to be up there for a lot of people. Red Rising probably too. This Is How You Lose a Time War, Expanse, yeah. Those are a lot of popular books. What is your favorite out of all of these? What would you say your favorite is? I want to hear it. But also, like I said, if you don't like Immortal Beloved, please don't tell me. I'm so emotionally attached to that book. Please don't tell me if you don't like it. Anyways, thank you as always for watching, and I will catch you next time. Bye.